What's going on, guys? We're on vacation. We're out here in the desert and I'm traveling around, and I don't know about you, but whenever I travel and see some new stuff, I love to take time lapses of it. Just kind of my thing. So I thought, why not make a video giving you guys 5 tips so you can easily, quickly up your time lapse game. Let's go. Vacation. A great time to see new things, unwind, relax, and hopefully not be glued to your camera the entire time. But for creators and photography lovers, that can be tough. So one of my go-to things is time lapses. I love to just set up and hit the record button and actually enjoy the time that I have there instead of just being glued to that camera screen. It's a great way to enjoy what's around you and still have something to take home. Well guys, we're here in the desert and I'm giving you 5 tips to up your time-lapse game. And the first one's a pretty simple one. We'll start off with the easiest, and that is go wide. Go as wide as you think you can without losing detail, depending on your setup. But what this is gonna allow you to do is, if you don't have a whole lot of time to find that perfect composition, you're gonna be able to crop in post. Not only crop in, but also add zoom and have movement so you can get a bit of emotion to it. So that's my first tip, go wide. Keep in mind that not every time-lapse is going to be the coolest thing you've ever seen. In this case, I didn't even know that the clouds were moving in opposite directions. It just kind of worked out that way. So when you do set up and it's not the greatest thing, don't be hard on yourself. Sometimes it just doesn't work out. Oh, it's hot. Who would have thought, eh? It's hot in the desert. Anyway, tip number 2, and that is shoot for longer. Shoot for longer than you think you need to. And maybe you're aiming for a 20-second time lapse, shoot 40. And that way, if something's not interesting, if the sky or the clouds aren't moving the way you want them to, you can maybe speed them up to make it that much more interesting. So always shoot a little bit more than you think you need to. That's tip number 2. So here's an example of that. I thought this beautiful view was going to be fantastic, but the fact was that the clouds just weren't moving very well. So here's the time lapse at 100%. And here's what it looks like sped up to 400%. And I think it looks much more interesting, but keep in mind, being 400% faster, your clip's gonna be 4 times shorter. And that's why you gotta shoot for the extra time, just in case. Okay, so tip number 3, get lots of movement in your shots. Maybe that sky's not moving so much, so make sure you maybe have a few things that are moving. Maybe you have some traffic and the sky. Maybe you've got some people going around. Who knows, whatever it is, get moving in there. Motion is emotion. That's my 3rd tip. Consider how you could capture different layers of motion. That's what captures our attention. Be creative and be unique. And while we're talking about movement, don't rule out a hyperlapse, which is basically a moving time lapse. Tip number 4 is master your gear and your settings. Know what you're doing before you get there. This is going to save you a lot of hassle, and if you're just getting started with time lapses, of course there's a bit of trial and error, but do your best to learn before you actually show up to where you're shooting. Here are a few setting tips for you. As far as shooting interval goes, the time between your shots, the faster the object or the scene, the shorter you want the interval. If there's an object moving quickly and the interval is too long, the final product will look choppy. And that's because the objects are moving too far between shots. Next, make sure you use manual focus. This ensures that if something changes in your scene, you don't lose focus on what you want. Also shoot in your camera's manual mode. This ensures that your shutter speed, aperture, and ISO remain constant throughout your time lapse. And this can allow you to avoid flicker, which is when your camera automatically changes settings to compensate for the changing exposure. And don't forget to turn off image stabilization on your lenses and camera. When you have it on when your camera's on a tripod, it can do some really weird things. Make sure it's off. And speaking of tripods, make sure you use and invest in a sturdy one. They can be expensive, but it's a buy once, cry once type of situation, and you won't regret it. And there's some setting tips for you. Let's move on to my last tip. My last tip is kind of a boring one, but completely necessary, and that is plan and prepare. I can't stress this enough. I can't count how many times I've run out for a last minute time lapse of the sunset or something and forgotten my memory card, my battery, my camera, you name it. So it's always best to plan ahead, find out where you're gonna go, what's required, and do a quick inventory to make sure you're not leaving anything behind. And make sure you pack a snack. You could be there for a while. Well, my friends, that's it. There's 5 time-lapse tips for you guys. I wanted to keep it short and sweet, and there it is. I hope this video helped you out, and if it did, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. Drop your questions in the comments down below, and like always, make mistakes, be yourself, and get out there and take some more time lapses. See you next time, guys.